Dr. Tony Evans once said, if all we see is what we see, then we are not seeing all we need to see. If all we see is what we see, then we're not seeing all we need to see, because there is more to this world than what our eyes see and our ears hear. There is more going on in your life than what your eyes can see, what your ears can hear, what your tongue can taste, what your hands can feel, because life is more than just what you see. There is a battle going on, Paul reminds us, in the heavenlies. An unseen spiritual contest, and listen, it impacts everything we do. I want you to listen today as if life and death were at stake, simply because they are. What we're going to share over the next 3 weeks is so important that I can tell you this. In 27 years of preaching and ministry, I have found the devil fights harder when I preach about how the devil fights harder. That there is more spiritual warfare that goes on in a church than any other time when a church begins to think about spiritual warfare. Many of us are blind to this by what the Bible refers to as the spirit of the age. We become unaware of it by choice. We are unaware of it today because we say to ourselves, Pastor Todd, we now live in a scientific world. We live in a rational world. We understand they had a need to talk about spiritual battles and evil and demons and angels and all that in the past to explain things. But we're too sophisticated now for that. We don't really need to believe in such entities because, well, we've just kind of, as a race, outgrown it. To which I would simply ask you, so are you telling me we also have outgrown God? Is that what our claim is? That by being a people that now live in a rationalistic era surrounded by science, somehow we now say we have no more need of God? Because I will tell you this, in the world in which I walk, I see a greater need for God than I've ever seen before. And I do not see a lack of spiritual hunger in our world. I merely see a world that is increasingly confused about how to satisfy that need. And in reality, we hunger for more than logic can explain. We hunger for more than science can instruct about. And when we look around ourselves today, any reasonable person says we exist in an incredible world that has all over it the fingerprints of a maker, of a creator, of a God. And so, Pastor Todd, we haven't outgrown our need for God. We have not outgrown our realization and our recognition that God certainly must exist. So in turn, we can't outgrow the question, what is he like? And the answer to the question, what is God like, is best answered by realizing that the greatest revelation of God ever is Jesus. Nod your head if you're with me today. Let me see those heads nod down at South. Do you realize the greatest revelation of God we ever had of what God is like is that he sent his son Jesus, who came here to earth and walked among us, and he was God in flesh. And so if the greatest revelation of God is Jesus, then the greatest understanding that we'll ever get about whether or not there is some legitimate battle out there would come from Jesus. And you know what the Bible says? The Bible says that Jesus personally waged war against the devil. Look on the screen at Matthew 4. This is during a time when Jesus is being tempted, and Jesus says to him, "Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only." Then the devil left him, and the angels came and attended him. You say, "Pastor Todd, I think we're too mature to believe in that kind of spiritual warfare." What does that make Jesus, immature and clueless? Jesus referred regularly to demons. And he referred regularly to us being victorious in the spiritual realm. Mark 1 says, Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. And so today, if you would like to say, "Pastor Todd, I believe in God, but I have no use for any other spiritual entities," you simply speak nonsense according to the Bible. That if we're going to say God exists, we must recognize that he is not the only character on the spiritual battlefield. If you got that, say, "Got it." If we're a people of God's word, then we recognize there is a spiritual battle that is raging and it is going on. And so the first thing that we must do is we must define the battle. What is this battle? What's it over? Why is there a battle that's going on? We've got to define that. So what's the real war? Is it just some kind of cosmic capture the flag that God and the devil are playing for bragging rights? What's this battle heading towards? How's it going to terminate? How's it all going to work out in the end? What does this look like? Who'll win? Who'll lose? When will they win? Why will they win? How is all that going to work out? Well, understand that the cosmic battle has been raging from the very beginning of time. God created man and woman, his precious creation, and Satan himself came to them and tempted them, and they turned away from God. But God brought behind that other descendants who would turn their heart back, and God in his grace and in his love worked with our forefathers. And so God would work and would call out righteous men and women, and the men and women would come, and he would tempt and he would test, and the people of God would wax and wane, back and forth and back and forth. So God called a man named Abraham and said, "This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take him, and of him I'm going to make a great family, and of that family I'm going to make a great nation, and all of the people of all of the earth will be blessed." And so God raised up this nation, and what did Satan do? Satan enslaved them in Egypt. And so what did God do? God sent for them a deliverer named Moses, who brought those people out, and he brought them into this good land that he had promised. And so there they are, the people of God, meant to be the light of the earth. But the battle wages, and the people of God move back and forth between times of revival and renewal and times of disobedience and distress and depression, and God would send them deliverers. And this goes on for over 400 years. And finally, God says, "You know what? Enough of just doing it through this man or through this woman or through this nation." And God finally says, "You know what? Instead of just calling my men and women to do this, I will win this battle once and for all." And so God sent Jesus. And Jesus comes. And Jesus goes to work. And the cosmic battle once and for always, the greatest blow in the midst of it all, is struck when Jesus crushes the head of the devil by his work on the cross. Colossians 2:15 says, "Having disarmed the powers and authorities, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing them over them by the cross." God, through Jesus Christ, won the cosmic battle for now and forevermore through his Son, Jesus Christ, and what he did for us. This is our God and what he has done. And you need to understand that the spiritual warfare that we're going to talk about in these 3 weeks is not any longer about who's going to reign supreme, who's going to ultimately win in the end when it's all said and done. Because when Jesus said, "It is finished" at the cross, it really was won, and God had won, and the devil had lost, and the devil's plans can't prevail, and his troubling does not lead to his triumph, and the eternal victory of good over evil and righteousness over sin and God over Satan is over. It is over. It is over. It is over. And this is what our God has done. Come on, wake up, oh church. Rise from the dead, and Christ will shine his light on you. And this is the victory he has won. And so you're like, well, wait a minute, Pastor Todd. Why bother preaching 3 weeks if the cosmic battle is over? It's a great question. I'm glad you asked. Because you and I need to know today, then what's the battle for? What are they still fighting over if God has already won? Well, this is how we define the battle. And here's the answer you need to know. The battle is over us. The battle that remains is a battle over you and me. We are the prize that the war rages on for. Oh, the end's already been written. God will be victorious. The only battle that remains is over the prize of us. And get this, we are not only the prize. Look, church, we're not only the prize, we also are the participants. We're not just the one being wrestled for. We are the ones who are in the match. Ephesians 6:12, the very first verse that was read, says this: our struggle, see that? Our struggle is not against flesh and blood. Whose struggle? Our struggle. We're in this battle. But listen, it's not against flesh and blood. Let me tell you something you need to get straight. Right from the start in this series, people are not your problem. Come on, church. That boss that makes you mad, that coworker who doesn't do what you want him to do or need him to do, your kids, your neighbors, the guy around the street who seems to want to make your life miserable, the person who took your parking space today at the mall, they are not your problem. People are not your problem because we are not wrestling against flesh and blood. The battle is in the spiritual realm. And it's a constant battle. And listen to me. Just because it's unseen doesn't mean that it's not unrelenting. And just because it's unseen doesn't mean that it's not unfair. It is an unfair battle because the enemy never fights fair. And we are in an unrelenting battle because we are God's prized possession. And you say, Pastor Todd, what's the battle over me? I mean, are you really sure this is going on in my life? Because, I mean, every day I get up and I go to work and I do my thing. And when you say there's a battle, what kind of battle would there be over me as a believer? Well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever said to someone or thought this thought to yourself, you know what? I'm saved. I've given my heart to Christ. The Spirit of the living God dwells inside of me. The power of God, according to the Bible, is available to me. Someday when I die, I'm going to go to heaven and be eternally with Him. And all of this is so great. So what's going on inside of me? Have you ever thought that? Have you ever said, why in the world, if all of that's true, that I'm a child of God and God lives me, why am I so tempted to chase those lustful thoughts? If God lives inside of me, why is it when someone does something petty to me, I feel so vindictive and it can wreck my day? Come on, am I the only one who ever deals with this stuff? So if I have the power of God living in me, why is it when somebody at work does something that I think is wrong, I so want to figure out how to get even. Why is it when I see something nice that someone else has that sometimes I just feel like I got to have one of those? And like my life's not going to be fulfilled until I get the stuff that they got, or I have a house as nice as they have. Why can't I get past these guilty feelings that I have because of my past? Why is it that I say I trust God, but so often I let fears rule my life and rule my heart and rule my decisions as if I don't trust him? Why is it, Pastor Todd, that if I'm a child of God and he lives in me, that I still wrestle daily with these addictions that are hanging on in my life? If I'm truly a Christian, why haven't I gotten all these things ironed out by now? I've been working on them for like 40 years. And the answer to that question is because you're in a battle. Because you're in a battle. That's why you continue to wrestle with these things. Because the battle is over us. Now that we've defined the battle, we must define the battlefield. Where's this going on? Because when we think about this idea that we're engaging in a spiritual battle, okay, Pastor, I buy in, you're right. There is a struggle that goes on in my life. So where is the battlefield? Look, if you're trying to figure out how you're going to deal with this, how do you win that battle? I'm going to go tonight. I'm going to go find a demon somewhere. I'm going to kick some demon butt, man. I'm going to get involved in this battle. Listen, as long as the devil has you thinking pitchfork, horns, and a red suit, he's got you trapped in foolishness. As long as you think that's the devil, that ain't a bit of help to you. And let me tell you something else. It is not one bit of help to you to chase after the sensationalized images that Hollywood provides. Rachel, I'm going to talk about this for a minute. You can pull that silly little picture off the screen for a minute. But you know what? Let me say this. It is no help to your spiritual life to watch horror movies. That's not even in here. That's not even in the script. Write me notes, Pastor Todd at reallife.us. There is no help to your spiritual life to watch horror movies. If you're like, oh, I can figure out how to beat the devil by doing this. Can I tell you something? Everything Hollywood throws at you, the sulfuric smells, the snarling faces, the guttural voices, you don't fight the devil with a crucifix and holy water. Do you understand that? You aren't going to really win in spiritual warfare by shouting the Lord's Prayer 30 times and rubbing rosary beads. It's not how it's done. You can't drive a stake of holly through the heart of the devil and win. It's not how it works. That's not what we're talking about. Rather, you must understand that this battle is not won by those kind of things. Understand what the enemy really looks like. It's given to us in 2 Corinthians 2. It says this: Satan disguises himself as what? Say it with me. An angel of light. Can I tell you what? Can I tell you that the issue is not whether the devil's going to figure out how to threaten you. It's that the devil wants to figure out how to appeal to you. Come on, that is good. I'm going to say it again. As you're thinking about the spiritual battle, stop worrying about how is the devil going to threaten me and think about how might the devil try to appeal to me. That's his methodology. He doesn't want to slay you in the ways we think of it. He wants to beat you by confusing you. He wants to beat you by getting you to sign up for his ideas instead of God's. That's why he masquerades, he disguises himself as an angel of light. Because here's what you need to know. If the battle is over us, the battlefield is our minds. Say that with me. The battlefield is our minds. Turn to the person next to you and tell them, the battlefield is our minds. Folks, the battle, it's fought right here in this 6 inches. 7 for those of you that God blessed with a wide forehead, okay? Right here. 2 Corinthians 10 says this, the weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. What are the weapons of the world? Bombs, guns, in this day, knives, spears, arrows, slingshots. Those aren't the weapons we're going to fight with. On the contrary, the weapons we're going to fight with, have divine power to demolish strongholds. And then look at the kind of things we demolish. Arguments, pretensions. What's a pretension? Something we make up. Pretensions that set themselves up against the knowledge. Where do we have knowledge? In our mind. Against the knowledge of God. And we take captive, what are those next two words? Every thought to make it obedient to Christ. Where's the battle, folks? It's in the mind. Our thought life, what we dwell on, how we use our thoughts, how we feed our mind will seal the deal for who's going to win the battle. And some of you are like, well, I'm in trouble, Pastor Todd, because sometimes I have a troubled mind, or sometimes I have a confused mind, or I'm getting a little older, my mind doesn't work quite as sharp as it used to. Does that mean I'm in trouble? Oh, no, because listen, it is the habit we establish, it is the things that we go back to in our mind that will influence whether or not we're going to win. It's whether we set ourselves up to win or to lose, because the battle is severe in our minds for this reason. All sin and all righteousness in our lives begins in the mind. There's no such thing as a sin that you commit that you didn't first process, that you first didn't think a thought. There's no such thing as a righteous act that you say, as a righteous word that you speak, that you didn't have to first process in your mind. Saying the right thing, saying the wrong thing, doing the right thing, doing the wrong thing. It all starts here. And as we develop habitual patterns in our thinking, that's going to move the battle one way or the other. Look, if you develop sinful, habitual patterns, habits in your mind, then what happens is your mind will simply return back to those things again and again and again. A habit's like a rut in your mind. Have you ever been down a muddy road and there's just a rut? No matter how hard you pull left or right, you seem to just go back to that? We can create those in our minds. And once we do you know all the devil has to do? He doesn't have to come threaten us. He doesn't even have to work very hard at us. All he's got to do is pop up something that reminds us. A smell, a sight, a memory, anything that takes us right back to that pattern again and again. I got great news for you. The same is true in the positive. That's why Paul says, let there be a renewing in your mind. So what we do is we begin to retrain our minds to say, you know what? There are different things I need to think on than what I'm spending all my time thinking on. And as you begin to go back to those places again and again and again, then when you have that smell, when you have that image, when you have that view, when you have whatever that might be, it won't drive you to go back to a habit that's displeasing to God or defeating to you. It'll drive you to go back to thinking of the things that you're in the habit of thinking about. Does that make sense? This is how it works. This is how the battle's in our mind. And some of us just need to start by saying, you know what, devil? My mind is not going to be your playground today. Oh, no. You can throw at me what you want, but I'm going to choose what I'm going to think about. I'm going to choose what I'm going to dwell on. I'm going to choose how I'm going to react to whatever lousy, dumb, stupid things happen today. I'm going to choose how to do it. You see, many times, well, I think, oh, man, the devil's got to throw all this horrible stuff at me. He's going to come against my mind. You know, a lot of times we make it so easy on him because all he has to do is agree with what you and I are already thinking. Because we're letting wrong thoughts just circle. All he has to do is, he doesn't have to come along and disagree with us. He just has to come along and agree. You say to yourself, you know what? I shouldn't behave this way, but I'm just doing this because I'm lonely. I mean, God, don't you know I'm really lonely? You know what the devil does? He comes along and says, you know what? Poor you. Certainly everybody would understand that you're lonely, and we'll give you a pass. Go ahead. Feel that way. Act that way. We say, yeah, you know what? I don't have that, but others have that. It doesn't hurt them. And the devil says, that's right. Who made them more important than you? Why should they have that car? Why shouldn't you? Why should they have all those new clothes and not you? I have a right to be angry. Oh, he just come along and agree with you. In fact, he'll help you along. He'll say, well, not only be angry, let me help you plan your revenge. Even better. See, he just agrees with what you're allowing yourself to dwell on. I shouldn't do that, but it's no big deal. That was just, hey, you're right, that's no big deal. Sure, what's the harm? What's the big deal? You see, Satan will gladly help you pursue all kinds of things, so long as those things don't move you towards God. You're like, well, I thought Satan wants to steal and kill and destroy us, so does that mean that if I do the wrong things, it'll always come out in a way that's like feels bad to me? No. He's going to let you do all kinds of stuff that at the moment feels great. Looks like it's going to be fine. We're going to talk more about this before it's all done, but Satan is a master of pushing as far as he can out consequences from actions and thoughts. He's going to push them out of ways. Why? Because he disguises himself like light. And he'll be glad to help provide all kinds of things for you in this world, as long as those things don't move you towards God, as long as they'll move you away. So you're like, well, this is kind of depressing. Sermon's kind of scaring me a little bit because you said there's this big battle that's going on in my mind, and I don't feel like I'm prepared, and now what am I supposed to be doing? I'm sure I must be losing this battle. And what's going on? Is this downward cycle just always going to defeat me? But this is the great news I want to wrap up with you today, and it's this. You don't have to be defeated in your mind. Come on, church. I got one amen on that. We can do better than that. We don't have to be defeated in our mind. We can actually win. The passage says to us that there is an armor that we can put on, and that when we put the armor on, we're going to win. Look, God knows we're in a battle, and our God provides us what we need out of all of his riches that he says he has. He gives us what we need. So don't you realize there's no way God would just say, sorry about it, that's just kind of the order of things, and you're going to be in battle, so best of luck to you. No, God says, I know you're in a battle, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to provide for you armor. I'm going to give it to you. And if you will clothe yourself in this armor, it will be the difference between defeat and victory. Now, I'm going to repeat myself because you need to hear it. If you will clothe yourself in the armor, it will be the difference between defeat and victory. Let me put it this way. You will win the battle if you put on the armor. What's the word in white? Say it with me. Will. One more time. Will. I'm going to win this battle if I put on the armor. You mean if I put on the armor, I finally have a fighting chance? No, that's not what I mean. You mean if I put on the armor, it's now 50-50, me versus the devil, let's duke it out? No, that's not what I mean. You mean if I put on the armor, I'm probably going to win? No, that's not what I mean. Here's what I mean. If you will put on the armor of God and live underneath his plan for your mind in this battlefield, you will win. You will win. The night is nearly over, Paul says to the Romans. The day is almost here, so let us put aside the deeds of darkness and do what? Put on the armor of light. In other words, Paul says, there is a way to make our mind mind. Some of you are like, I got this wild mind. I just can't make it mind. Oh, yes, you can. You just haven't put on the armor. You just haven't yet put on the armor. And you can make your mind mind. You can take something out of here today that works all 7 days of every week. Because in reality, can I say something? You really only believe the parts of the Bible that you do. Isn't that the truth? You don't really believe it if you don't do it. You really only believe the parts of the sermon that you do, which, by the way, is one reason why a lot of preachers get discouraged. You really only believe the parts of the sermon that you do. I'll tell you one more thing about the way the devil thinks, and we'll close, and it's this. I'm pretty convinced that the devil doesn't much care how excited you are about what a preacher preaches for 30 minutes on a Saturday night or a Sunday morning. I don't think he's that worried that you get excited during a sermon. I don't think that worries him one bit, so long as you ain't going to go out and do any of it. He'll gladly give you an hour in church if in return you'll give him the rest of the hours of the week. He'll be fine with you putting your hand up. He'll be fine with you sitting here thinking, good, oh man, good sermon, yeah, just inspiring. He's okay with that, so long as this is the only hour you're going to do that. He'll grant that to you. He can deal with that. But when you and I put into practice, when you and I go out and do what we hear, oh, now the battle's on. And the devil says, man, I got to put some people after that guy. I got to go after that girl because I got a bad feeling about this because they left Sunday morning and on Monday they were still doing some of the stuff they amened. He doesn't like that very much. You're like, well, I don't want to respond to the sermon then because the devil's coming after me Monday. Yeah, well, he can come after you all he wants. Once you have the armor of God on, he ain't going to get you. You're not going to win. You're going to win. You're going to take him down. You're going to do a little happy dance on top of his face. Because you are going to put on the armor of God. And so beginning next week, we're going to go through and we're going to break down the armor of God into two sections. And it's laid out this way for us. This isn't something I made up. This is exactly how Paul laid it out. And you're going to find out that there is armor that is made so that I can defend myself. And then there's armor that we take up so we can defeat our enemies. I can defeat my enemy. So some of you are like, well, Pastor Todd, don't do this. Don't send me out of here today and tell me, well, next week I'm going to get that. No, I wouldn't do that to you. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to stick around and listen to 2 more sermons. No, we're not going to do that. Not going to do that. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you the very first thing that is the key to your victory this week. Sound like a deal? I'll give you the very first way. You're going to go out here and go, hey, you know what? I can put this into action. And it is this. Here's how for the renewing of our mind, and our minds are renewed by the Word of God. And I can give you an immediate step that we can begin to take, all of us, this week to already win victories against the enemy on the battlefield, which is the what? I'm going to give you ways to win victory in your mind this week. What I did was I spent a fair bit of time in preparation for this series really working through what are the prime classic battles that go on in this battlefield. What are they? And after looking at all the different things that we can think through in our mind, I've broken them down into 7 different topics, topically, that I believe are the areas where the battles go on in our minds. They are as follows: lust, fear or anxiety, anger, bitterness, discord, rage, all those things would fit into that category. Jealousy, greed or materialism, the desire to continue to chase things instead of the deeper things in life. Guilt or defeat, areas where we look back or areas that we feel like we can just never get over and win. And then discouragement and depression, an overall sadness comes upon our lives. I believe these are the 7 large categories. These are the 7 battles that go on the battlefield. And so what I did was I said, you know what? The Bible speaks in volume on every one of these topics. And so I went to really a bushel basket of helpful, if you will, artillery. Helpful, a whole arsenal of what we could have to fight in these 7 areas. But because I couldn't hand you out, a book, we decided to make something that you could just take with you in these 7 areas. And Each of them, we have chosen 2 verses, because it's almost so much space, but 2 verses. And here's how this works. You get angry, we're not going to go to the same place where we always go. Instead, we're going to renew our minds, and we're going to look up, and we're going to see here, you know what? Be gentle and ready to forgive. Never hold grudges. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. Wow, that's a good verse, isn't it? That's a good verse. That'll reset your mind when you're really thinking about punching that guy. It's going to reset your mind. And so what we've done is we've made enough of these for you to take one when you go. This is your arsenal for this week. And not just for this week. We laminated them so they're going to last. We want you to put these somewhere. And when you face one of these things, you can go. Now, listen, this is only 14 verses. Do you know what will last longer than this card? For most of you, your mind. You see, the best thing of all is to commit these to memory so they're always there. But we can start with having them there. And look, there's not a thing wrong with reading these out loud. Man, when the devil comes against you and you're feeling jealous, you just take one of these verses on jealousy, you just read it out loud. And you say, take that and go back where you belong. All right? The devil's the only person on the planet you're allowed to tell him to go to hell. All right? He's the only person on the planet you're allowed to say that to. Straight up. Pastor Todd at reallife.us. All right? Honey, don't put your head in your hands. That is solid biblical truth. All right? So, we have these. This is a practical way in which you and I say, if you have the armor on, you can't lose. I want us to bow our heads together today as we close.